sat in the sterile waiting room of the Galactic Embassy, his prosthetic leg aching despite the advanced neural interface that usually kept phantom pain at bay. The chrome walls reflected his weathered face from his last tour on 442B, where humanity had made first contact with the Empire. That contact had cost him his leg, 3 fingers on his left hand, and most of his faith in diplomatic solutions. The receptionist, a blue-skinned with 4 arms, gestured toward the massive doors leading to the throne chamber. "His Imperial Majesty will see you now, Sergeant." "Former Sergeant," corrected automatically, though he straightened his shoulders out of habit. Military bearing died hard, even after 2 years of civilian life. The throne room stretched before him like a cathedral built for giants. Crystalline pillars reached toward a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time view of the 3 moons. Emperor dominated the far end of the chamber, his massive frame covered in scales that shifted from deep purple to silver depending on the light. At nearly 12 feet tall, he was smaller than most of his species, but his presence filled the room. Had met the Emperor once before, during the treaty negotiations that followed the brutal First Contact War. Back then, had been just another alien trying to find common ground with humanity. Now, seeing him dying, felt an unexpected pang of loss. "Sergeant," the Emperor's voice rumbled through translation implants, though caught the underlying clicks and whistles of the native language. "You came. You said it was important, Your Majesty." Approached the throne, nodding how the Emperor's breathing seemed labored. The message mentioned something about inheritance. His massive head tilted, and what might have been a smile played across his reptilian features. "Direct as always, this is why I chose you." He gestured with one clawed hand toward a side chamber. "Come, there is someone you must meet." Followed the Emperor through an archway into a smaller, more intimate room. Soft lighting cast warm shadows on walls lined with what appeared to be personal mementos, weapons, artwork, and holographic displays showing various worlds within the Empire. But its attention immediately fixed on the creature lying on a raised platform in the center of the room. At first glance, it looked like a wolf, but one bred by an alien imagination. Its fur was silver-white with patterns that seemed to shimmer and move, and it was massive, easily the size of a small horse. Its eyes, when they opened to regard the newcomers, were a deep amber that held an intelligence that made skin crawl with recognition. "This is Al," said, his voice softer than before. "In your language, the name means faithful shadow. He has been my companion for 47 of your years." The wolf creature raised its head and heard something impossible, a voice in his mind, clear and distinctly masculine despite its alien cadence. "So this is the human my bond brother has chosen. You smell of old battles and honest sweat. Good." Stumbled backward, his hand instinctively reaching for the sidearm he no longer carried. "What the hell?" "Al is telepathic," explained, settling heavily onto a cushioned bench nearby. "His species, were the first to join our empire willingly. They serve as companions and advisors to the royal family." "I am more than a pet human." The mental voice carried a note of amusement, though your reaction suggests you have never encountered true telepathy before. "No," admitted, still trying to process the sensation of another consciousness touching his thoughts. "We don't have anything like this on Earth." "Which is precisely why you need him," said. His breathing grew more labored and noticed how the Emperor's scales had begun to fade to a dull gray. "I am dying, Sergeant. The physicians give me perhaps a week." Felt something twist in his chest. Despite their species being enemies just years ago, he had come to respect the Emperor during the peace talks. Had been the one to push for mercy when his military advisors wanted to glass human colonies in retaliation for their losses. "I'm sorry," said and meant it. "Do not be. I have lived long enough to see peace between our peoples, but Al." The Emperor reached out to stroke the creature's massive head. "The bond for life. When I die, he will enter what you might call grief sickness. Without a new bond, he will follow me into death within days." "It is our nature," Al confirmed, his mental voice tinged with sadness. "We are not meant to walk alone." "But I don't understand," said. "Why me? Surely you have family, other who could." "The bond cannot be forced," interrupted. "It must be freely chosen by both parties, and Al has already chosen you." Stared at the massive wolf, whose amber eyes seemed to look straight through him. "When?" "During the Treaty of New Geneva," Al replied. "You spoke against the proposed punishment of prisoners of war. You said that soldiers who fought honorably deserved honorable treatment, regardless of species. I saw into your heart that day. You judge beings by their actions, not their appearance. The memory came back to clearly. The human delegation had wanted to use captured soldiers as leverage, but had argued against it during a closed session. He hadn't known the Emperor's companion had been listening. That doesn't make me qualified to be anyone's, bond partner protested. I can barely take care of myself these days. You underestimate yourself. Al rose to his full height and realized the creature's head would reach his chest when standing. You carry great pain, but you have not let it poison you. This is rare among warriors. Coughed a sound like grinding stone. I know what I ask is strange, Sergeant. Your species has no tradition of such bonds, but I have studied humans extensively since our first meeting. You are pack animals you understand loyalty and sacrifice. What would it mean exactly, asked, this bond? We would share thoughts when desired, Al explained. I would sense your emotions, your general well-being. You would gain some of my abilities' enhanced senses, longer resistance to certain toxins and diseases. In return, I would have purpose again. And if I refuse, then I will die with my current bond brother, as is proper. The casual acceptance in Al's mental voice hit harder than expected. This creature was willing to die rather than be forced into an unwanted partnership. Struggled to his feet and instinctively moved to help steady the massive alien. There is more, Sergeant. Al is not merely a companion. His kind serve as diplomats, translators, and mediators throughout the galaxy. With him at your side, doors would open that remain closed to other humans. You could serve as an unofficial ambassador, helping to build the peace we have started. Looked back at Al, who had settled back onto his haunches, waiting patiently for a decision that would determine whether he lived or died. Can I think about it? Of course, but know that my bond brother has perhaps 3 days remaining. If we are to attempt the bond transfer, it must be before he passes. The weight of the decision settled on shoulders like battlefield gear, familiar, heavy, and impossible to ignore. He had joined the military to serve something larger than himself, had fought aliens across 3-star systems because he believed in protecting humanity. Now he was being asked to form an alliance with an alien that could reshape humanity's future in the galaxy. I need some air, said finally. Nodded. The garden outside has a viewing platform overlooking the city. Take all the time you need, but remember time is the one thing we have precious little of. Made his way through corridors that seemed designed to make humans feel small and insignificant. The embassy was built to their scale, with 12-foot ceilings and doorways wide enough for their massive frames. But instead of feeling intimidated, found himself thinking about the conversations he'd had with soldiers during the brief ceasefire negotiations. Strip away the scales and the size, and they weren't so different from human troops. They complained about rations, worried about families back home, and shared crude jokes to cope with the stress of war. The realization had been what convinced him to argue for their humane treatment as prisoners. The garden was a marvel of engineering, with plants from dozens of worlds somehow thriving in carefully controlled atmospheric zones. Found the viewing platform easily enough. It was the only area scaled for human use. The city spread out below him like a circuit board come to life, with transport streams carrying between towering spires of living crystal. Overwhelming, isn't it? Turned to find Ambassador Sarah approaching, her diplomatic credentials glinting on her formal jacket. He had worked with her during the treaty negotiations. She was sharp, pragmatic, and one of the few people who had supported his position on prisoner treatment. Ambassador nodded. I didn't know you were on the station. I heard about the Emperor's condition, she said, joining him at the railing, and about his unusual request. She studied his face carefully. You're actually considering it. Should I be? Was quiet for a long moment, watching the alien city pulse with life below them. Do you know what the biggest challenge facing human-alien relations is right now? Mutual distrust, cultural differences, the fact that we were trying to kill each other 2 years ago. Communication, she said simply. Oh, we have translators for language, but we don't have translators for intent, for cultural nuance, for the 1,000 little things that turn treaties into genuine understanding. Thought about Al's voice in his mind, carrying not just words but emotional context, meaning that went beyond language. The serve that functioned throughout the Empire continued. They've prevented more conflicts than our military strategists could calculate, not through force but through understanding. And you think humanity needs that? I think humanity needs to be more than the species that shows up with guns blazing, replied. We've proven we can fight. Now we need to prove we can do something else. Fingered the scar on his left hand, remembering the battle where he'd lost his fingers trying to pull a wounded soldier to safety during an unexpected ceasefire. The alien had survived, and later on's behalf during the war crimes tribunal that nearly derailed the peace talks. What would happen to me? He asked. Officially, I mean. Officially, you'd be a civilian contractor with diplomatic immunity, said. Unofficially, you'd be the first human to form this kind of partnership. Everything you learn, every precedent you set would shape how we interact with dozens of alien species going forward. No pressure, muttered. Smiled, I've read your file. You've never taken the easy path when you thought the hard one was right. That's exactly why the Emperor chose you. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching alien traffic flow through the city's airways like blood through arteries. Finally, turned to head back inside. Where are you going? Asked. To make a decision that's probably going to change my life forever, replied. Again. Back in the Emperor's private chamber, found asleep on his bench, breathing shallow and labored. Al lay nearby, his massive head resting on his paws, amber eyes tracking his approach. He grows weaker, the said without preamble, perhaps hours rather than days. That settles it then, said, settling cross-legged on the floor near Al. What do I need to do? The alien wolf's ears perked forward and felt a wave of something like relief from the creature's mind. You are certain the bond once formed cannot be easily broken. We would be connected for the remainder of our lives. How long is that exactly? For you, perhaps 3 times your normal. For me, perhaps 200 more of your years if I am fortunate. Absorbed that information. He was 34 years old. A normal human might give him another 50 or 60 years. Tripled, that meant nearly 2 centuries of life, most of it spent with an alien voice in his head. Will I still be me? You will always be yourself. I will not change who you are, merely expand what you can become. Stirred, his eyes opening to focus on with obvious effort. You have decided. Yeah, said, I have. The Emperor managed something like a smile. The bonding ritual is simple but permanent. Al will need to enter your mind completely. You must accept him without reservation, or the bond will fail and kill us both. Felt his mouth go dry, both. A failed bonding tears the psyche, Al explained gently. But I sense no deception in you, no hidden fears that would cause such failure. You have a warrior's directness, it will serve us well. What do I do? Struggled to sit up and helped support him. Place your hand on Al's head, open your mind completely, think of nothing but acceptance. He will do the rest. Reached out slowly, his hand looking pale and small against Al's massive skull. The moment contact was made, the world exploded into sensation. Felt Al's consciousness rush into his mind like a flood, bringing with it decades of memories, emotions, and experiences. He saw the galaxy through alien eyes, battles fought alongside, diplomatic missions to hostile worlds, the deep satisfaction of preventing conflicts through understanding rather than force. But more than memories came through the bond. Felt his senses expanding, becoming sharper. He could smell the individual components of the chamber's atmosphere, hear conversations happening 3 rooms away, sense the life forces of every being on the space station. His prosthetic leg, which had always felt like dead weight, suddenly integrated seamlessly with his nervous system as biotechnology interfaced with human cybernetics. Easy Al's voice was soothing inside his mind. Let the changes settle. You are still yourself, but now you are more. Opened eyes he didn't remember closing and found himself looking at the world with perfect clarity. Colors were more vivid, details sharper. When he moved his prosthetic leg, it responded like living flesh. How do you feel? Asked, his voice barely a whisper. Different, admitted, but good different. He looked at Al, who was now sitting upright, looking more alert than he had since arrived. I can sense your emotions. And I yours. Your grief for fallen comrades, your guilt over surviving when others did not, your hope that this partnership might serve some greater purpose. We are not so different, you and I. Smiled, his scales flickering briefly back to their original purple hue. It is done then. Al is yours now, Sergeant. Protect each other. The Emperor closed his eyes and was still. Felt the moment of passing like a physical blow, not just through his own grief, but through Al's overwhelming sense of loss. The had loved like a brother, had shared his thoughts and dreams for nearly 5 decades. He was a good bond brother, Al said finally. He brought peace where there was only war. We will honor his memory. Yes, agreed, surprised by how natural it felt to include himself in that we will. As station medical personnel arrived to attend to the Emperor's remains, found himself thinking about what came next. He had a new partner who could live for centuries, enhanced abilities he was only beginning to understand, and a role in shaping humanity's future among the stars. Worried about the future, Al asked, rising to stand beside him. Aren't you? I was until now, but I have learned something from our first shared thoughts. What's that? Humans may be young in the galaxy, but you understand something many older species have forgotten. That true strength comes not from standing alone, but from choosing who you stand with. Reached out to rest his hand on Al's flank, feeling the creature's steady warmth and unshakable loyalty. For the first time since leaving the military, he felt like he had a mission again. The bond was complete. The real work was just beginning. 3 months after bonding with Al, discovered that being a diplomatic translator was considerably more dangerous than combat duty had ever been. The crisis began with what should have been a routine meeting aboard the neutral station Harmony's Rest, positioned at the junction of human and space. The collective, a hive-minded species of crystalline beings, had requested mediation in a territorial dispute with a human mining consortium. On paper, it was exactly the kind of situation the new human partnership was designed to handle. Stood in the station's central hub, watching shuttles dock through massive transparent aluminum windows while Al paced beside him. Even after 3 months, the sight of his bond partner still drew stares from other species. They were known throughout the galaxy, but seeing one bonded to a human was unprecedented. You're nervous, Al observed, his mental voice carrying warm amusement. You're increased when the delegation's shuttle arrived. I've studied their files, replied aloud, having learned that switching between mental and verbal communication helped him maintain his sense of individual identity. But reading about a hive mind and actually negotiating with one are different things. Indeed, the think as one entity but present as many, it can be disorienting for species like yours that prize individual thought. Touched the small translation device clipped to his collar, a piece of biotechnology that would allow him to communicate with the crystalline aliens. 3 months of working with Al had taught him that technology and telepathy combined could bridge gaps that neither could manage alone. The voice belonged to Director Helena, representing the Terran Mining Guild. She approached with the confident stride of someone accustomed to turning asteroids into profit. I hope you're ready for this. They aren't exactly known for flexibility. That's why we're here, replied diplomatically, though privately he wondered if understood that the dispute involved more than mining rights. The claim the contested system contained sites sacred to their collective consciousness, a concept that didn't translate well into human property law. The human female thinks only of resource extraction, Al commented privately. She does not understand that some things cannot be owned. The delegation arrived in the conference chamber like a living constellation. Each individual stood roughly 7 feet tall, their crystalline bodies refracting the rooms, lighting into patterns that seemed to pulse with internal rhythm. When they spoke, it was in perfect unison, their voices harmonizing in ways that made teeth ache. We are here to resolve the transgression, they announced through their translators. The humans must cease their violation of the sacred nodes. Director leaned back in her chair. With respect, the system in question is unclaimed territory. Our surveys found no signs of habitation, no markers, nothing to indicate ownership. The crystalline bodies flared brighter and felt Al tense beside him. Anger, his bond partner warned. The collective is experiencing something between fury and confusion. They cannot comprehend how anyone could fail to sense the sacred sites. Stood, drawing attention to himself. Perhaps we could start by establishing what exactly makes these sites sacred to your collective. They turned toward him as one, their bodies creating a kaleidoscope of refracted light. You are the human with the bond. We sense the connection between your minds. Yes, this is Al, my bond partner. Good, you may understand what the others cannot. The shifted, their formation tightening. The nodes are memory crystals. They contain the experiences of our ancestors who explored these regions before your species achieved. Frowned, memory crystals. Our geological surveys showed ordinary quartz formations. Ask them to show you, Al suggested. Sometimes understanding requires more than words. Would it be possible for you to share what you experience at these sites? Asked. Help us understand what we're missing. They conferred among themselves in harmonics too complex for the translators to parse. Finally, they responded. Dangerous. Your minds are not designed for collective experience, but the bonded one might survive brief contact. Felt a chill run down his spine. Survive. Individual minds can fracture when exposed to collective consciousness, but the bond may provide sufficient protection. Leaned forward. Now hold on. I'm not going to authorize anyone to risk. It's my choice, interrupted. He looked at Al, whose amber eyes reflected calm confidence. What do you think? I can shield your mind from the worst of it. And if we are to truly understand their position, we may need to experience what they experience. How would it work? Asked the physical contact with our primary speaker. We will share the memory of the sacred nodes. Duration must be brief to prevent damage to your individual consciousness. Stood and approached the delegation. Up close, their crystalline bodies were even more impressive, shot through with veins of light that pulsed in complex patterns. Their primary speaker extended one multifaceted hand toward him. Remember, you are not alone. Al's presence strengthened in his mind. I will anchor you to yourself. Reached out and made contact. The universe exploded into collective experience. Suddenly was not one mind, but thousands, spread across space and time. He experienced the wonder of this first exploration ships discovering the contested system millions of years ago. He felt their awe as they found naturally occurring crystal formations that resonated with their consciousness, creating perfect repositories for memory and experience. Through the collective perception, understood that they didn't just visit these sites. They communed with the stored experiences of their ancestors, learning from the accumulated wisdom of. To them, destroying the crystals for mining would be like burning down humanity's libraries and museums combined. But more than understanding their position, felt the genuine confusion of the collective mind when trying to comprehend individual consciousness. To beings who shared all thoughts and emotions, the human concept of private property was literally incomprehensible. Enough, Al's voice cut through the collective experience like an anchor line. Return to yourself. Broke contact and staggered backward, his individual awareness slamming back into place with jarring intensity. For a moment, the silence inside his own head felt crushing after the symphony of shared consciousness. What did you see? Asked urgently. Sat down heavily, trying to process what he had experienced. It's not just about sacred sites, he said finally. It's about their entire relationship with memory and knowledge. Those crystals contain the experiences of their ancestors going back millions of years. So they're archaeological sites, pressed. We can work around those. No, you don't understand, looked up at her. They're not just historical artifacts. They use them actively to commune with their ancestors to access stored knowledge and experiences. It's how their species learns and grows. This body's brightened. The bonded human comprehends. The nodes are not objects to be preserved. They are living repositories of our collective soul. His expression hardened. That's all very touching, but we're talking about a system worth billions in mineral wealth. Surely there's some compromise we can reach. Felt Al's attention sharpen, and his enhanced senses picked up something troubling in the director's tone. A determination that suggested she'd already made up her mind regardless of what the negotiations revealed. She has no intention of abandoning the mining operation, Al confirmed. I sensed deception beneath her diplomatic words. Director said carefully, what exactly are you prepared to offer? Standard compensation for archaeological preservation. We'll document the crystal formations, relocate them if possible, and provide them with detailed scans and holographic records. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as the bodies dimmed to an ominous low glow. Relocate, their voice carried harmonics that made the walls vibrate. You speak of moving the bones of our ancestors. You offer pictures of graves in exchange for desecrating them. Now see here, stood, her diplomatic mask slipping. These are unclaimed mineral rights in neutral space. You can't claim ownership of an entire system based on some crystals your ancestors left behind. Realized the negotiation was about to collapse into something much worse. The collective was beyond offended. They were moving toward a level of outrage that could lead to military action, and seemed determined to push forward regardless of the consequences. The human female's mind is closed to compromise, Al observed. She sees only profit, not the catastrophic war her stubbornness might trigger. Perhaps we should take a recess, suggested quickly. Give everyone time to consider options. No need, said. Our position is clear. We're prepared to begin mining operations next week with or without approval. The law is on our side. The delegation rose as one, their bodies now pulsing with angry red light. Then you choose war. The collective will defend the sacred nodes. Director Wait called but was already heading for the exit. You can't just walk away from this. Watch me, she replied. The guild didn't spend 3 years surveying that system to be scared off by some crystals and ancient history. As the door closed behind her, found himself alone with an increasingly agitated delegation. Their collective consciousness was radiating fury that he could feel even without direct contact, and he realized he was looking at the prelude to another war. They will attack the mining ships, Al warned. The collective has decided that some violations cannot be tolerated. Is there anything I can do? Asked the mining humans must abandon the sacred system. This is not negotiable. If they proceed, we will stop them. Enhanced hearing picked up the sound of the delegation's shuttle powering up for departure. Within hours, they would be back in collective space, mobilizing their fleet for war, and would be sending mining ships into what was about to become a combat zone. We need to contact Ambassador immediately, Al advised. Perhaps Earth government can override the guild's decision. But as tried to reach office, he discovered the communication channels were being jammed. Someone, most likely the mining guild, was preventing outside interference in their operation. They're not just stubborn, realized. They're planning something. Something that requires preventing diplomatic intervention, Al agreed. We need to reach that system before the shooting starts. Looked at his bond partner, seeing his own determination reflected in those amber eyes. You're talking about going rogue. I am talking about preventing a war. Is that not worth the risk of insubordination? 24 hours later, and Al were aboard a fast courier ship heading for the contested system, having borrowed the vessel from the station's diplomatic fleet. Had left a message for Ambassador explaining his actions, but by the time she received it, he would either have prevented a war or started one. I still think this is insane, Captain Torres muttered from the pilot's seat. The young officer had agreed to help only after Al had demonstrated the truth of claims about the impending conflict by sharing memories from the collective consciousness. Insanity is often indistinguishable from necessity, Al replied philosophically. Besides, you wanted to serve on the frontier. This is what frontier service looks like. I meant exploring new worlds, not flying into the middle of a shooting war, Torres replied. Not a war yet, corrected, studying the tactical display. We've still got maybe 6 hours before the first mining ships arrive and 8 before the fleet gets here. The contested system materialized around them as they dropped out of hyperspace, a ordinary-looking collection of planets orbiting a yellow star. Long-range sensors showed the asteroid field where the memory crystals waited, looking like nothing more than space debris to human instruments. There, Torres pointed to a cluster of dots on the display. 3 guild mining ships right on schedule. Opened a communication channel. TMG Prometheus, this is Diplomatic Envoy, please respond. The reply came immediately, tinged with irritation. What the hell are you doing here? This is a restricted corporate operation. Director, you need to evacuate your ships immediately. The collective has mobilized their fleet. They'll be here within hours. Nice try, but our intelligence says the nearest ships are 3 days away. Exchanged glances with Al. Your intelligence is wrong. They've been preparing for this since you walked out of negotiations. Even if that were true, which I doubt, we're not backing down. This operation represents too much investment to abandon over alien superstitions. She will not listen to reason, Al observed. Her mind is closed to any outcome that does not serve her immediate goals. Director, I'm transmitting scanner data from the edge of the system. Take a look. There was silence for several moments, as presumably reviewed the information showing the approaching fleet, 15 crystalline ships that looked like living sculptures, but packed enough firepower to reduce the mining vessels to constituent atoms. How did you? Never mind. Even if they are coming, we've got corporate security escorts. We can handle ourselves. Looked at the tactical display showing 3 lightly armed security ships against a collective battle fleet. Director, those ships aren't designed for combat with a full military force. You need to withdraw. We're not withdrawing, and you're not authorized to negotiate on behalf of Earth. Consider yourself relieved of any diplomatic status. The channel closed with a snap of static. She would rather see her people die than admit she was wrong, Al noted with something like disgust. This is the kind of rigid thinking that starts wars. Tours get us closer to the mining operation. If I can't talk sense into, maybe I can convince her crews. As their ship moved toward the asteroid field, his enhanced senses began picking up something his purely human perception had missed during the previous day's rush to get here. The crystals weren't just sitting in the asteroids. They were responding to his presence, resonating at frequencies just barely within his expanded hearing range. Do you hear that? He asked Al. Yes, the memory crystals are aware of us. They sense the bond between us and recognize it as something similar to their collective consciousness. Could they communicate directly? Possible, but dangerous. You have already experienced one collective mind today. Your individual consciousness might not survive a second contact so soon. Thought about the approaching fleets, about Director's determination to proceed regardless of consequences, about the thousands of lives that would be lost if this situation devolved into combat. What if there was another option? What if instead of humans fighting, someone could make both sides understand each other's position? You speak of serving as a bridge between collective and individual consciousness. It has never been attempted. But it's possible. With sufficient preparation and a strong anchor point, yes. But the risks to your sanity, your sense of self, would be extreme. Looked at the tactical display, watching the mining ships moving inexorably toward the crystal field while the fleet approached from the opposite direction. In 6 hours, unless something changed, this system would become a battlefield. Set course for the largest crystal formation, he told Tors. And send a message on all frequencies, tell both fleets that someone wants to mediate this dispute in person. Are you certain? Al asked privately. Once we begin, there will be no turning back. Touched his bond partner's flank, drawing strength from the connection that had already changed his life once. Sometimes the only way forward is through the impossible. As their ship moved toward the crystal field where memories millions of years old waited in crystalline silence, began preparing for the most dangerous negotiation of his career, one where failure would mean not just war, but the complete destruction of his individual consciousness. The crystal formation stretched across 3 kilometers of space like a frozen web, each strand glittering with internal light that pulsed in rhythms too complex for human perception. As and Tors approached in their small diplomatic craft, the resonance frequencies grew stronger until could feel them in his bones. Proximity alarms, Tors reported nervously. Both fleets are moving faster than expected. They will be here in 4 hours. The mining ships are already beginning extraction operations. Through the viewport, could see the massive guild extractors positioning themselves around the outer edges of the crystal field, their mining beams already beginning to carve into asteroids that had remained untouched for millions of years. The crystals are screaming, Al said, his mental voice tight with sympathetic pain. The ancestors stored within them are experiencing something akin to torture as the miners disrupt their matrix. Can you connect me to the mining ships? Tors opened a channel and could immediately hear the excitement in the voices of the extraction crews as they reported successful crystal harvesting to Director. Director, you need to stop the mining immediately. They aren't just approaching, they're already here in the crystals themselves. You're not just mining resources, you're destroying living memory. His response was sharp. I've had enough of your interference. These are mineral rights in open space and we're exercising them. Whatever mystical nonsense you've bought into is irrelevant. A new voice cut into the channel captain of the guild security escort defender. Mister, We're picking up massive energy signatures approaching the system. Whatever's coming, it's big and it's moving fast. Felt Al's attention sharpen as his bond partner's enhanced senses reached across space to touch the approaching fleet. They are beyond anger now. They have felt the death screams of their ancestors and entered what you might call a collective battle fury. They will not negotiate. They will not pause. They will destroy everything human in this system to stop the desecration. Tours, get us to the central crystal formation, that large cluster about 2 clicks from the main mining operation. Sir, that's going to put us right in the middle of whatever's about to happen. That's the idea. As their ship moved deeper into the crystal field, began preparations for what Al had called the most dangerous translation in galactic history. The plan was simple in concept, terrifying in execution, would use his bond with Al as an anchor point while connecting his consciousness to both the collective and the individual human minds of the mining crews. If successful, he could create a moment of mutual understanding that might prevent slaughter. If unsuccessful, his mind would shatter across multiple consciousness paradigms. The central formation is responding to our approach, Al reported. The ancient memories within it are curious about us. They sense the bond and recognize it as something unprecedented. Can they communicate? Not in words as you understand them, but they can share experience, memory, understanding. The question is whether your human consciousness can survive contact with minds millions of years old. Felt the ship dock with a natural formation that jutted out from the central crystal like a landing platform. Through the viewport, he could see the massive crystals up close, their faceted surfaces reflecting not just light, but something deeper patterns of thought and memory that had been preserved since before Earth's dinosaurs walked. I'm going out there, he announced. Tors looked at him as if he declared his intention to breathe vacuum. Sir, the atmospheric readings are all over the place. Those crystals are putting out some kind of energy field that's interfering with our instruments. I'll be fine. Al's enhancements include resistance to most forms of exotic radiation. That may not be enough, his bond partner warned privately. The crystals operate on principles that predate most known technology. We are venturing into truly unknown territory. Then we'll learn together. Suited up in a basic environmental suit and stepped through the airlock onto the crystal platform. The moment his boots made contact with the formation, the universe changed. The crystals weren't just resonating, they were singing, their harmonies creating patterns of meaning that bypassed language entirely and spoke directly to consciousness itself. Could feel the vast age of the formations, the weight of millions of years of stored experience pressing against his awareness. Steady, Al's presence strengthened in his mind. Remember who you are. You are human, bonded to Al of the, hold to that identity no matter what else you experience. Approach the largest crystal spire, its surface smooth as glass but warm to the touch. As his gloved hand made contact, visions began flooding his perception. He saw the early explorers discovering this system when it was young, their collective consciousness marveling at the natural crystal formations that resonated so perfectly with their mental frequencies. He experienced their careful cultivation of the crystals, growing them over into perfect repositories for memory and knowledge. But underneath the wonder, sensed something else: loneliness. The early had been seeking connection, trying to preserve not just information, but the essence of their collective experience for future generations who might venture into the void between stars. They were explorers, he whispered, understanding flooding through him, just like us. As the revelation settled, became aware of new presences in his mind, not the ancient memories, but living consciousness reaching across space. The approaching fleet was making contact through the crystals, their collective fury blazing like a star. Desecration, violation, death of ancestors, humans must be stopped. The emotional intensity nearly knocked unconscious, but Al's presence held him steady. Now comes the hard part, his bond partner warned. You must open your mind to the human mining crews while maintaining contact with the collective. Try not to lose yourself in either consciousness. Reached out with his enhanced telepathic abilities, seeking the minds of the guild workers. At first, he found only the focused concentration of professionals doing their jobs, oblivious to the approaching catastrophe. But as he touched their awareness, he began to sense the individuals behind the roles. Captain Tors, young and eager to prove herself, but increasingly worried about the situation she'd been dragged into. Chief Engineer, focused on efficiency, but beginning to realize that the crystals they were mining showed signs of artificial cultivation. Security Chief Harrison, a veteran who recognized the signs of an approaching battle and was quietly preparing his people for combat they couldn't win. And Director, her mind blazing with ambition and desperation in equal measure. Through her thoughts, discovered the truth. The guild was facing bankruptcy, and this mining operation was their last chance for financial survival. She wasn't just stubborn, she was desperate. HUMNS approach, WAPUNSCHRGNG, THUIWILL die for their crimes. The collective was now close enough for their battle fleet to begin targeting the mining ships. Through the shared consciousness, felt their weapons powering up, felt their absolute certainty that destroying the humans was the only way to prevent further desecration. But he also sensed something else through the collective confusion. They couldn't understand why humans would destroy something so obviously sacred, so clearly important to another species. To their collective mind, such behavior was literally incomprehensible. They think humans are fundamentally evil, Al translated. They cannot conceive of beings who would harm others through ignorance rather than malice. Then I'll have to show them, said. He opened his mind completely, dropping all barriers between his consciousness and the swirling vortex of thoughts surrounding him. Ancient memories flowed through him, while human desperation and confusion mixed with collective fury and incomprehension. For a terrifying moment, felt his individual identity beginning to dissolve under the weight of so many different forms of consciousness. But he was also millions of ancient explorers. He was Director's desperate gamble and Chief Engineer's growing horror and Captain Tor's fear, and the collective's blazing fury all at once. MARCUS, remember yourself. Al's mental voice cut through the chaos like a lighthouse beam. You are the bridge, not the destination. Hold your position. With tremendous effort, pulled his scattered consciousness back together, using his bond with Al as an anchor point while maintaining connections to both human and minds. The strain was enormous, but for the first time in galactic history, collective and individual consciousness were sharing the same mental space. Through the link, the collective experienced human individuality, the loneliness, the constant struggle to understand others, the way humans had to guess at motivations and intentions without the benefit of shared consciousness. They felt Director's desperation not as greed, but as a different form of collective survival instinct, her responsibility to the thousands of guild families who would lose their livelihoods if the company failed. At the same time, the human mining crews experienced the depth of connection to the crystals. Through's bridge, they felt the weight of ancestral memory, the sense of communing with beings who had touched these formations when Earth was still young. They understood, suddenly and viscerally, that they weren't just mining crystals. They were destroying a library, a church, a repository of living history. The moment of shared understanding lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. Sweet mother of, Chief Engineer's voice came over the communication channel. Director, we need to stop. These aren't just crystals, they're people, stored people. All mining operations halt immediately, Captain Harrison ordered, his security training kicking in. Unknown alien artifacts require clearance before extraction. Felt the collective surprise as the human mining beams shut down. Through their shared consciousness, they experienced the humans' genuine horror at what they had unknowingly been doing. The collective rage began to shift, confusion replacing fury. Why do they stop? Understanding flows from Bridge mind. Humans did not know. They could not sense what you sense, projected through the link, his mental voice carrying both individual determination and collective wisdom. They lack your connection to shared consciousness. They could not feel the pain of the ancestors. Director's voice cut across all channels, sharp with anger. What is wrong with you people? We have quotas to meet, investors to satisfy. Resume mining operations immediately. But her crew was no longer listening. Through's bridge, they had experienced the true nature of what they were destroying, and professional soldiers and miners both understood the concept of sacred ground. Director, Captain Harrison's voice was calm but final. I'm declaring this a prohibited archaeology site under Guild Regulation 47C. Mining operations are suspended pending proper survey. HUMANS show honor, collective RECUNSIDRS violence. felt the weapons powering down, though their fleet continued its approach. The immediate crisis was over, but the underlying problem remained. The guild needed these minerals to survive, and they could never allow mining of the memory crystals. "Can you maintain the bridge a little longer?" Al asked. "There may be a solution, but it requires continued communication between the minds." With enormous effort, held the connection open, feeling his consciousness stretched thin between different forms of thought. Through the link, he felt both sides grappling with the same problem from different perspectives. Then Chief Engineer's voice came over the channel, excited. "Director, I'm reading massive mineral deposits in the outer asteroid belt, same rare earths we came for, but in conventional formations. No crystal matrices, no signs of cultivation or artificial enhancement." "How much?" asked, her tone shifting from anger to desperate hope. "Enough to meet our quotas 3 times over, maybe 4 times. The yields look incredible." Through the collective consciousness, felt a stirring of interest. The crystals were sacred, but ordinary asteroids were simply raw material, if the humans could find what they needed elsewhere in the system. Acceptable alternative. Mundane STUNES have no NCSTRS. Collective permits HARVSTNG of non-sacred MATRALS. "There's your solution," said, his voice strained from maintaining the bridge. "The don't object to mining ordinary asteroids, they just can't allow harm to the memory crystals." "And what about us?" Director asked. "Are we supposed to just pretend this conversation never happened?" Through the collective link, felt the discussing among themselves at the speed of thought. Their decision came quickly. HUMANS showed honor when understanding came. Collective OFFERS trade. Mundane MATRALSFOR protection of sacred sites. "They're proposing a formal agreement," translated. "They'll help you locate and extract minerals from the non-sacred parts of the system in exchange for establishing this area as a protected archaeological site." Captain Tor's voice crackled over the comm. "Sir, I'm picking up ships moving into defensive positions around the crystal field. They're not threatening us, they're taking up guard positions. Sacred sites require GUARDINS. Collective WILL maintain presence. Humans, welcome to harvest elsewhere under TAKHARI protection." Felt the arrangement settling into place like puzzle pieces, finding their proper positions. The guild would get their minerals, they would preserve their ancestral memories, and both species would gain something unprecedented: genuine cooperation based on mutual understanding rather than grudging compromise. But maintaining the bridge was becoming impossible. Felt his consciousness fragmenting under the strain, his individual identity blurring at the edges. "Let go," Al advised gently. "You have done enough. Let each mind return to itself." Allowed the connections to fade, feeling both relief and loss as the collective consciousness from his awareness. For a few minutes, he had been part of something vast and ancient. Now he was just himself again, tired, strained, but whole. "Is it over?" Tors asked. Looked out at the crystal field, where ships now moved in graceful patrols between the memory formations, while guild vessels began surveying the mineral-rich outer asteroids. "It's beginning," he corrected. "This is what real cooperation looks like." 6 months later, stood in the observation deck of the newly established Joint Research Station, watching human and crews working side by side to unlock the secrets of the ancient memory crystals. The partnership had grown beyond simple resource sharing. Human curiosity about individual consciousness fascinated the collective mind, while collective memory offered solutions to problems that had plagued human space exploration for decades. "Regrets?" Al asked, joining him at the observation window. Watched a human carefully documenting crystal formations, while an advisor shared ancient memories of the system's formation. In the distance, guild mining ships extracted unprecedented quantities of rare minerals with guidance. Their efficiency improved 100-fold by collective processing of geological data. "None," replied honestly, "though I never expected diplomatic service to be quite this intense." You bridged the gap between individual and collective consciousness. Such things are never simple. "What's next for us?" Al's mental presence carried warm amusement. "Ambassador has received 17 requests for human mediation teams from species throughout the galaxy. It seems word of our success has spread." Groaned theatrically. 17 potential interstellar incidents. 17 opportunities to build understanding where none existed before. Is that not what you wanted when you accepted our bond? Reached out to rest his hand on Al's flank, feeling the steady warmth and unshakable loyalty that had carried him through the most impossible negotiation of his career. Yeah, he admitted, it is. Outside the observation deck, human and ships moved through space in careful coordination, their cooperation a testament to what could be achieved when different forms of consciousness learned to understand each other. The galaxy was vast, full of species with conflicting needs and incompatible ways of thinking. But an Al had proven something important with sufficient courage. Understanding could bridge any gap, no matter how wide. The real work was just beginning,